What's up, guys? We're going to get started in a little bit. Just posted the link, so give everyone a second to get in here and join us, and then we're going to look at some charts tonight. I did not finish my weekend review, so this is basically going over all of the tickers I had something to keep an eye on and kind of narrow it down and see if there's a play we can make this week. We will get started shortly in just about 2 minutes. So sit tight, grab a glass of water, and come on back in a little bit. In about 2 minutes, we're going to get started. And like I said, this is just the weekend review that I didn't get a chance to do earlier. So I am going to go over some tickers, not necessarily a play on all of these. This is just the starting list for me. And then I'm going to narrow it down and see if there's anything trade-wise that we can look forward to. So like I said, I'm just going to give it a few minutes here. I just posted the link on Discord and Twitter, giving everyone a moment to see that and get in here, and then we'll go ahead and get started. If you guys have questions on charts, bring them up, because I'm only looking at, I think I have about 20 or so on here. I can certainly look at any chart that you guys want to look at. And then part two, we might move this over to Discord for those of you that are in the Black Box membership. And we might continue over there, because over there you guys have a chance to talk. On YouTube Live, it's just me talking to you guys. I want this to be interactive, so part two will be you guys over on Discord. Hopefully everyone here is a member of the Black Box service, so I can talk to all of you guys at once and you guys can talk back. If you're joining me from Twitter and you're not a member of Black Box, unfortunately that part won't be available to you. But the first part is just going over charts that I was looking at that I didn't get a chance to narrow down and filter out. So we can do all that together. If you have questions, or like I said, if you have a chart you want to look at that's not on my list, you can type it in the chat section and we'll pull that up and look at that as a group. If anyone has comments on the chart that I am looking at, please, please, please type them in the chat room, because this is just what I see and I trade the way I see things. So if you see things a little bit differently than I do, you can open my eyes to a different perspective of something that I might not be looking at. So by all means, if I'm saying something looks good here, I like it for long, and you're saying, wait a minute, I liked it short, speak up. Let me know what you're looking at that makes you want to go short on something. Again, these are just kind of my quick perspective of what I was looking at over the weekend. And it is 5:01. Let's give it 1 minute here so people can get over here from Discord. And then I'll go ahead and get started. If anyone has a ticker they want to look at, go ahead and type that in the chat box now, just so I can make a note of it. I don't think Roku is on my list, but it's on my regular list. So we can pull that up. Shop was a nice one at one point this week, I believe. Amazon, Tesla. You guys like to trade the regulars? Apple, SPY. All right, let's go ahead and get started. So this is kind of a Black Box After Dark episode. I am basically going to look at some tickers that I was looking at over the weekend and didn't get a chance to really filter down. So what I like to do is, once the market closes Friday, run through some scans. And the scans will basically be, I have like 7 or 8 different scans that I use. There's actually a lot more than that. There's a few that I really filter down to, and I'll kind of just write a note of anything that is kind of catching my attention. It doesn't have to be a clear-cut shot at, oh, hey, we have to trade this. It's just something that catches my attention. And that's what I'm going to go through now. Out of those 25, 30 tickers, whatever I write down, I'm not trying to trade 20 to 30 different tickers. So what I'm doing is going through the scan, writing down anything that catches my attention, and out of that, I'm going to write it down. I'm going to go take a look at it in further detail afterwards, and then I'm going to narrow that 20 to 30 list down to hopefully about 10. Out of those 10, hopefully narrow it down even further, and then out of, let's say I have 7, 8, 9 tickers or so where I like the setup, I'm going to try and trade 1, 2, maybe 3 of those throughout the week. I would like to trade all of them if they have a great setup. But what I really like to do is basically just get a nice list of anything that catches my attention, and then from there filter it down to something that really has a better setup and a more actionable trade than anything that just barely catches my attention. And then from there filter that down to what am I really going to focus on this week and try and trade. So that's what we're going to go through right now. The first one is actually not a trade of mine, so I am going to not really spend time on it. If you guys are in Black Box, you know Tech Money. Tech Money is an amazing trader. He is watching Starbucks. Starbucks came up on one of my scans also, so that's why I'm going to mention it really quick here, but I'm not going to go over it too much because this is kind of Tech's trade. I think he's in it already, or he's preparing to set up a trade for it. So I'm going to let him go over this one over on Discord when he gets on there. But one thing I wanted to point out, if you guys look over here, this is the monthly chart. This is going to be a weekly chart. And then over here, this is the daily chart. So that's the setup that I'm looking at. And what I like about the monthly chart is we see it topped out here. We can see a nice little decline. We can see the second month of decline. And then over here, we've got this candle here, which typically signals kind of a bullish reversal here on the monthly. If we look over here on the weekly, we can see it starting to kind of round out and make its way back up. And then coming over to the daily chart, we see some resistance over here. So if we draw that line in there, you can see a little resistance here. It was resistance right here. Wednesday, it did pop up above that line. Friday, it gave some back, but it did close above that line. So for Starbucks, SBUX, we're looking at this about 84. The line I have is 84.83. Keep in mind, it doesn't have to be an exact line. It can be a zone. In this case, I think I drew the line back over here. So it held as kind of support here. It was a little bit of resistance for a few candles in here. Clearly resistance there, and it popped through Wednesday. Friday gave a little back, but closed above it. So that's what I'm looking at for Starbucks. And after each ticker, I will pause for a little bit because YouTube Live has a little bit of a delay. So after each one, I'll pause for a second. If you guys have any comments on Starbucks, if you've traded it before, if you know how it acts, if you're bullish or bearish, go ahead and type in the comment section right there, and I'll give you guys a second. If there's no comments, I'll move on real quick. But I will give you guys a second. If you have any comments on Starbucks, go ahead and type them in there, and we'll take a look at it. See if you guys see the same thing I'm looking at. See if you see something different. Maybe there's something you can bring to my attention. One thing you'll notice on my charts is they are pretty clean. I do not use a lot of indicators. So if you guys have indicators you like to use that's showing you something different from what I'm seeing, by all means point that out and we can take a look at it, because I typically don't like to use indicators. I like nice and clean charts. Renee is in Starbucks. It's doing what you were hoping. That is awesome. If it breaks, where do I see the next resistance? I would probably go to this level here, because if you look over here, there's some resistance there. And if we draw a line there, it was resistance here also. This candle, when it popped up, it didn't quite get up there before it pulled back a little bit. But because it's kind of a resistance area here and resistance here, there's a candle here that touches it. That's probably the next level I would look for, which is 87.82. But again, it doesn't have to be an exact line. We can draw a line under here, which is support area, which would be lower 87s. So somewhere in the lower to mid to upper 87 area would be resistance. And it just depends on where it opens and how it moves. If you have a good day and it gaps up, it can start somewhere up here. So it just depends on how it opens and what it's looking like. 83.62 as the make or break line. 83.62. Let's go ahead and put a line at 83.62 and let's take a look at what you're looking at. That would be the support level for this candle. I'm assuming that's where you got that line from. If you're looking at that, these 3 candles here are just a little bit below that. Well, actually it's not. It's a good 70 cents below that. Yeah, somewhere in that range. There's definite support down in here, so it depends on where you got in and how much risk tolerance you have. And if you got in close to here, you can give it a little more leeway to the downside. It's the holiday season. It's going to take off. Yes, that is possible. There's a few, I think, on here that I had 2 different lists, so I think there was a few on here that I had for holiday activity. Dark pool level from a couple of weeks ago. That could be. I don't have dark pool on these charts right here, so that's something we can take a look at later. When we go back into Discord, we can pull that up. The next one I had was McDonald's, MCD. And what I liked about this one, if we go to the monthly chart, we had a really nice run. We're on a pullback now. The month we just closed, this is November, we came all the way down here and then pulled back. We climbed and closed above that low, so that's a good sign there. You can see it's kind of over here, it's kind of stabilizing a little bit from the downside. The downside momentum definitely stopped. On the daily, you can see some consolidation here. What I would be interested to see. So if we draw some fib lines on this massive run that we had here, we're sitting right at about that 50% line. It did dip down here to the 61 line. It's hovering over the 50% line. So it's definitely at some fib levels. The levels I've got marked off here, you can see when it dipped down here, there's some support here. Let's make it a little bit cleaner even. Let's get rid of one of those. So you can see we're kind of hovering right around there. So that's a level that I want to watch, 194.85. And again, that's not going to be an exact level either. There's a few candle wicks and closes and opens in that area. So about the 195 area is something I want to watch for McDonald's. They had some news about the CEO. We saw a drop, and now it's kind of stabilizing. So if this level holds here, I want to see maybe a run back up north. So that's what I was looking at for McDonald's. Does anyone have any McDonald's comments? Again, there's a slight delay on YouTube Live, so if there's a pause for a minute or two, it's nothing wrong. I'm just giving you guys a chance to type something. The comment about McDonald's is that it is greasy, and that is 100% accurate. I don't think anyone can argue that. I try not to eat there personally. Let's move on to Etsy, ETSY. One thing I like about Etsy, if you look at the monthly chart here, we're on a decline. October was bad. November, we just closed. This is the monthly candle for November here. You can see that we went way up here, we went way down here, and we closed in the middle. So that candle is kind of showing some indecision. So one of the things I like about that is we're on a downtrend, and then we see, again, the downside momentum slowing a little bit. It's still closed red for the month, but we had an upper wick and a lower wick, and we closed somewhere in the middle here. So that's showing a little bit of buyers in control, sellers taking over, and then closing back in the middle. So that's an indecision candle where it's kind of wait and see which direction it breaks from here. I have a fib line drawn from, I guess that would be somewhere over here on the weekly chart where it bottomed out down here, all the way up to that 73.35. And the 50% line is right over here. If I remove the fibs, that line here is where this candle dropped for support. So we had a retrace here. We dropped. This is the area that it held for support before it started climbing. And it topped out a little bit here. We have this little W pattern here. We dropped, we came up, we dropped. We can call that a double bottom before it started taking off again. So Friday it pulled back a little bit. I'd like to see it hold somewhere in this upper 42 area here. And then what I like about this one is there's a gap fill. So if we put some candle or some lines on these candles here, there's a nice big gap in here that we're looking to fill. I don't know the time frame on that. There's no way to guess that. But I actually took a position on Etsy. I went out to January monthlies. So I have some time. I don't know if it's going to fill that entire gap by then, but the trade I'm in doesn't rely on filling the gap. It's a trade to fill the gap, but it doesn't have to fill the entire gap for me to make money on that one. So my stop is going to be somewhere down here in this 42, basically this mid 42 range. I want to see this peak in here hold as support if it drops further, and then I want to see it start making its way back towards this 46.72, which was the high over here, and then a break above that towards this 51, 52 area to start filling that gap. Does anyone have any comments on Etsy, ETSY? Have you traded it before? Do you like it? Do you not like it? The trade I'm in, I forget the strike. I'd have to look that up. I don't have that in front of me, but I am out to January 20 on those for a potential play to fill. And again, it doesn't have to fill the entire gap, but I'd like to see it hold this area here and then work on filling that gap there. So that's ETSY. Next one that hit my radar was TRV. And TRV, actually, I don't like a whole lot at this point. It hit my radar. This one was a gap radar, a gap scan, I think, that I did. So it does have a gap to fill here. The problem with this one, so actually I'm going to eliminate this one. The problem with this is that it was resistance here. It pulled back, showed some support here, and you can see it kind of building up a little bit under that support here when it pops through. So a good entry was 134.61, that area. Again, it doesn't have to be exactly that number. It can be a bit of a zone. But because this area was resistance here and then became support, and you can see a little buildup under there, that's kind of where I would like to see the entry for this one. And then you can take it from about 135 to about 140-ish, 142, or closer, 141-ish for that gap fill. So it's right now, it's at 136.72, so we're already $2 above this level here. So if you enter this for a gap fill, you'd have to have the risk tolerance to let it come all the way back down here to test this support. So for me, this is a bad entry to work on that gap fill, and it's already covered $2 of the gap. So for me, I'd like to see it pull back down and hold this 134, upper 134 area. And if it does that, if that holds and we start seeing some upward movement, then I'd like to get into TRV for that gap fill. But at this point, again, resistance became support. Over here, it's kind of building up under that level. That's where I would like the entry. So to get in when it's $2 higher from that for me is a chase. Doesn't mean it can't work. It can still go up to 140 and you can still get $2, $3, $4 out of this move. But for me, it's too high of a risk. The low risk entry is if it does pull back to this 134.61-ish area. And then if that holds as support, then we can work on an upward swing for that gap fill. So TRV was on a gap scan that I did, but it's a little bit of a late entry for now. There's a question on there, when I take my trades, which intraday do I use? It depends on what I am trading. So most of my trades are actually short-term trades. So I'm looking at a 1 minute and a 5 minute chart. These that I'm going over tonight are a monthly, a weekly, and a daily chart because I wanted to find some swing plays. We have a lot of members in the Discord that ask about swings, and a lot of us don't swing too much. There's one that I have in there on Twitter. That one, the entry I posted, the contracts, I forget what specific contracts, but they were 260 at the time, and I think they were going at 360. So there are some good swing plays out there. I don't do a lot of swinging, but we get a lot of questions about it. So one of the scans I did over the weekend was to try and find some more longer term swing plays. So what I'm going over tonight is over here. This is a monthly chart. This is a weekly chart, and this is a daily chart. If I'm going to do a swing for, say, a month, 2 months, 3 months out, I'm pretty much looking at this daily chart here. And if I'm going to do scalps and day trades, I'm not worried about a monthly or a weekly chart. It just doesn't make sense. So you want to time your trades to your time frame with the charts. If you're trying to day trade or swing trade, don't look at a monthly chart. Those monthly candles don't mean anything to you. You want to mark major support and resistance levels on them if there's a clear one, But if you're in a trade for 10, 15, 20 minutes, what happened 6 months ago really just doesn't apply to you. So if you're in a day trade or a swing trade, you really want to pull down into a much shorter time frame. However, if you're looking to trade something 4 months or 5 months out, and you're looking at a 1 minute chart, that chart isn't going to mean anything to you either. So you want to match your trade time frame with your chart time frame. If your trade is for 3 months out, what happens today doesn't necessarily matter. You can have a bad day, but you have 3 months for it to recover. So if you're looking at a 1 minute chart and your trade is for, let's say, June or July of next year, that 1 minute chart, you might get shaken out because of support breaks, but that's not significant for the trade that you're in. So try to match your time frame on your charts to the time frame of your actual trade. So what I'm looking at tonight is more geared towards trying to find something that we can swing a little bit more, because the Discord room asks for a lot of swings and a lot of us don't do a lot of swing trading. So I think I did a lot of scans trying to find some longer term stuff. Next up was GoDaddy, GDDY. And this one also, there's a potential gap in here. This one caught my eye because there was a support level in here that we kind of hovered around for a little bit and then we broke down. So GoDaddy is on kind of a short watch for me. There's nothing amazing that I see here, but it did close near its lows on Friday. If we draw a line over here, look at this, the resistance level here, that's kind of where it stopped. So I want to see if that holds as support. If that doesn't hold as support, we can do some downside trading on GoDaddy, GDDY. Has anyone traded this one before? I have traded this one in the past with some pretty good success on it. It had some pretty good movements. I don't remember when the time frame was. I don't think I've traded it recently. It has been a while. But I did a nice swing trade on this one a while back. I would love to say I got in here and exited here, but that's probably not realistic. But I did have a nice, it was like a 2 or 3 week swing trade that paid off nicely on GoDaddy. That is GDDY. So again, there's some resistance over here. It punched through and went on this run. And that's kind of the area where it stopped Friday. It had big momentum 3 days in a row to the downside and then stopped right at that level. It was resistance over here. So we want to see if resistance becomes support. If that level breaks, there's a downside play for GDDY. That's GoDaddy. Next up is HAAS, which is Hasbro. This one is another gap play. At this point, I'm sure you can see I did a gap scan on Friday. So one of the things, I actually pointed out what I was hoping for on this one with some arrows. But there's a nice gap here from the peak here was 105, and then we come way up here to 119.26. So a big gap to fill here. What I would love to see on Hasbro is we basically had a nice little run here, and then Friday a little bit of a pullback. Not really a monster pullback. Friday was a red day in the markets. So it's not unusual to see a red candle on a red day. That obviously makes sense. This ticker was just following the market. What I would love to see is maybe a pullback to this level here, which was the resistance here. We had a little bit of a drop and then a climb, and that's where it got stopped. If you look at this candle here, it got stopped at that point also. If we go way back here, there's 3 candles here, and then these 2 candles here. So this 99.43 area, which is close enough to 99.50. Let's just round the number out. We'll call it 99.50. It was resistance here for 2 candles, resistance here for 4 candles, and support here for 2 candles. So this 99.50 area, that's obviously a significant level for HAAS. So since we're on a nice little run here, it started at 94 and it went to about 102, 103. That's a pretty good run. A little bit of red on Friday. So what I would like to see on this one is a pull back to this 99.50-ish area and then cleared to run in an upward direction and hopefully work on filling this gap fill. I didn't put down any specific contract that I was looking for on this one. So that's something we'll have to take a look at later. Maybe if we jump back into Discord, we can take a look at that and see what specific play we would make. But Hasbro has a nice gap fill to work on. So that one caught my attention. With that big of a gap, I'd like something a little bit further out. I don't think I'd want something for January, February. Maybe look at when their next earnings call happens to be and then take something for somewhere in that time frame, maybe a little bit further out, because this is a pretty good gap fill. I don't have the ATR on this, so I don't know what the typical movement would be, but you can see these candles in here. It's not going to make a $4 or $5 run in any particular day. So for this, with such a big gap to fill, I'd like something a little bit further out. TXN was next. So the thing about TXN, we can see over here we had some resistance at this 119 level. This candle popped up and got pushed back at that exact level. Tried to break through, couldn't. Tried to break through. We had a gap up there. It became support for a few candles over here. So this, I've got it listed at 118.98. Again, support and resistance isn't always an exact number. So that's close enough to 119. We'll call it the 119 area. And then if we go down here a little bit, we'll give it, let's call it about 118 to 119 is going to be a bit of a support zone here. And we closed at 120.21. So Friday, we dropped a little bit closer to this line here. And the reason that line is sticking out to me, again, it was resistance over here, resistance for this candle, resistance became support, and then it went upwards again. And now we're kind of hovering around there. It's kind of going up and down on both sides. We dipped, we climbed above it, we pulled back a little. So there's no clear indication right now. So I'd want to watch and see what it does around that 119 area for TXN. But again, this was on the gap fill or the gap scan. We can see way up here at about 128, it dropped to 121. So there's a good $7 or $8 move somewhere in here. So if it pulls back to this area here and takes off again, that's another gap play. I think most of what I wrote down was probably from a gap scanner. ATR on HAAS is 2.21. There's a comment in the comment section there. So 2.21 is actually pretty good. For you guys that don't know ATR, ATR stands for average true range. 2.21 being the ATR, that doesn't mean in any given day it's going to go up or down $2.21. What the average true range is, it's the average between the high and the low for any given day. So whether it gaps up, gaps down, opens even, opens a little bit up, a little bit down, whatever the high and the low point for that day is, the average of that, in this case, would be $2.21. So I kind of keep an eye on that just to get an idea of how much movement we can expect in a given day. So if we go back to the Hasbro chart, right now it's at 101.70. Let's say it opens up at 101.70 and it dips to, let's say, 101, and that's the low for the day. With the average true range being 221, you would want to add 221 to that 101, and that would be about the expected high point for the day. Because the average range between low and high is 221, so you want to take the low point of the day and the high point of the day and kind of assume it's going to be about 221 movement between those two. That doesn't mean it has to be. It can obviously do double or triple that. It can do half of that. But average true range gives me an idea of when we start seeing where the lows and the highs are for the day, depending on what direction it's going in. The average range is just going to give me an idea of where I can look at for either taking stop losses or target levels for that. So with a $2 plus move average from low to high in any given day, it shows you that to go from 101 to 120, it's going to take some market participation, but if it can do, a $2 move in any given day, and it doesn't mean it's going to open or close $2 from the previous open or close, it just means from the high to low within that day. But a high ATR shows that it can have a decent amount of movement within the day. The next one I had written down was work. This one is, so here's what I liked about this one. We peaked and we went down, 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 down. On the monthly chart, this is the first green candle on the monthly chart. Now you can see there isn't a lot of history to this because this is relatively new, but with all that dropping and we finally get a green candle on the monthly chart, that's showing me again the downside momentum is possibly drying up, and we can either start to level off or consolidate. Maybe it consolidates and drops further, we don't know. But what we do know is that on the monthly chart we had red, 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 and finally November we closed green. If we look at the weekly chart, we can start seeing where we're not dropping like we were from the get-go. Over here we had drop, 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 little pullback, drop, and then you can see it clearly starting to consolidate here. And if we go over to the daily chart, we can see it even better. Right, there's a little bit of a decline here. It pops a little bit, comes back down, pops, comes back down, but we're not seeing that drastic downside movement anymore. And when it climbs, there's some clear resistance in this area here. We can see 1, 2, 3 times it hit that level and then stopped, but we also made a higher low. So one of the things I'm looking at on this one is that over here on the monthly, we were steep decline, and this is the first month of November, last month that we just closed, the first month where it's green. And then if you go over to the daily, you can clearly see that we're consolidating, trying to go upwards a little bit, but it got stopped here, which was this level here. It got stopped here again on Friday, pulled back a little bit, but we're not seeing that drastic downside movement anymore. So this is something I want to keep an eye on. The line drawn there is 23.27. And again, keep in mind, it doesn't have to be an exact number. So anywhere in this low 23 area here, we're going to watch that for some support and resistance. And what's interesting, this candle here, the low hit that line. These two candles, the high hit that line. We had a wick that broke through it, but it closed below. Friday, it came up, touched somewhere in that area and closed below. But again, we're not seeing that drastic downside movement on this one. So a lot of what I look at on charts is not necessarily news. It's not necessarily catalyst driven. It's strictly what the chart looks like. So there could be some bad news coming out for this. There could be some good news coming out for this. I don't follow any of that. So I'm strictly looking at what the chart setup is. And the chart setup right here is clearly resistance, 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 but we're seeing a higher low and that downside momentum stopped. So WORK, Slack Technologies, that's one I'm looking at to really stabilize here, and then we'll see if we can get some upward movement here and start going in the other direction. Next up, PGR. And this is kind of a crappy line that I have here, so I'm going to get rid of that one. Looks like I almost tried to force a resistance line in there, or a trend line. What am I looking at on this one? So over here on the monthly chart, there's 3 months where we had some support. Prior to that, there were 2 months where that was resistance. So this is a classic case of resistance becoming support. And if we look over here on the weekly chart, look at the consolidation above there before it pops up. And it broke through that line, and right now we're sitting a little bit above that. You can see on the daily chart there's a lot of consolidation around this area. So even if we draw another, if we draw a line in there, there's clear consolidation in this area here. This is going to be a congestion zone is what we like to call it. There's some upward movement, but it gets stopped there. There's some downward movement, but it gets stopped there. So between these two levels, it's just bouncing up and down. You can see it breaks into that congestion zone again, but it doesn't go below it. It comes back up. It breaks below it, but it stays within this particular zone. Once it breaks this upper level, it's still staying within the zone. So anytime it's between these two lines of 73.66 and 71.39, and again, I want to stress that those are not exact numbers to watch, but that area. So between 71.40-ish and 73.66-ish, you can see it tried to pop up again, but it came back down into that congestion zone. So anytime it's in this zone here, we want to watch it because we don't know if it's going to pop up and stay up, if it's going to drop through and stay down. Anytime it's in this zone, it's just confused. So we're going to wait and see what it does. But again, we popped up to it. Friday, we gave a little bit back. But again, Friday, there was some red in the market, so it's not unheard of to see a particular ticker be red. It's just following the market. But what I liked here is that there's massive consolidation in this area here. It held a support here, it held a support here, and we're trying to break above that area here. We had a little bit of a false breakout here, and then we came back into it, but we couldn't make a lower low. So this area here, I'm kind of watching that to be support. Obviously, I wouldn't want to see it get down that far, but if we can break above this upper 73 area here, and I can see why I drew that trend line from before. Let me see if we can figure out where it would be. Again, this one isn't exact, but it's about, you can see it touches it once, twice, 3, 4 times, 5 candles, 6 candles. So that's not the end of the world as far as a trend line. That one works. It touches a multiple case. False breakout here on this candle, and then it came back below. It broke out again, and there's 2 candles above it. So I want to see if we're going to start to see the upward movement on PGR. So that's what caught my eye on PGR. If you guys are on the East Coast, you better say Dunkin' Donuts is better than Krispy Kreme. I am originally from New York, so fight me on that one. Here we go, Dunkin'. Over here on the monthly chart, we had clear resistance, clear resistance, clear resistance, clear support, clear support. So this particular line, the $77 area, that's going to be a support resistance line that we're watching. You can see it clearly on the weekly chart. Resistance, resistance, support 2 different weeks, and it's building up under there. So on Dunkin', on the daily, again, you can see it clearly. There's a candle there. It's resistance. Popped through but couldn't hold it. 3 candles below, and then clear support, clear support. And right now, we popped through on Wednesday. Friday, we closed below it there. So $77 area. That's what I am trying to kind of keep an eye on just to see what we do in this area. So if you guys are new to technical analysis, there's a concept that says support becomes resistance and resistance becomes support. And what that means is a prior line that we could not get above, once we do get above, it's going to hold that line as support. So you can see right here, we got pushed down. We broke through it, but we closed below it. We got pushed down. So there's something about this level that the ticker just did not like at this point. Buyers were not stepping in to buy it. Sellers were. So it hits this, the sellers step in, and it gets pushed down. It gets bumped up, sellers step in and push it down. Once it breaks through, we want to look for this area to become support. And once it falls, you can see with this candle right here, it fell right to that level and then it bounced back up. With this candle, it fell to that level and bounced back up. So that's, in technical analysis, the concept we call resistance becoming support. And you can see it was resistance over here too. It didn't quite touch it exactly, but it's building up under this area and it just can't get through it. Wednesday it popped through it, but it closed below it. So there's something about this $77 area that we want to keep an eye on. We don't always know why it's support or resistance, but we know there's something about that level that's important. So at the very least, if you don't understand why that level is important, my comment to you would be, who cares? It doesn't matter. What matters is that it is important, and if we pull up the chart, we can clearly see it couldn't get above it twice, and then it couldn't get below it twice. So regardless of why we know that $77 is important or not, that area just happens to be important. So again, we tried to punch through it on Wednesday. We closed below it. Friday, we're still below it, but we didn't drop. We're not making lower lows here. You kind of look at this right here, 1 and 2 as a double bottom. So what I want to see is this $77 area hold. If we can break above that, I'd like to see it test at least. That's still trend line. Let me get on to price level. If we draw a line at the high of this candle, this is how awesome support and resistance are, guys. Check it out. We have a high point right here. We draw a line at that candle. Look at this candle. It tops out right at that same line. Look at this candle. It's support, 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 support. Resistance on this candle. So the thing we love about technical analysis is you don't have to understand why a particular level is important. You just know that if you're in a trade and it's around that level, you do want to pay attention to it. Whether you know why or not doesn't matter, as long as you know that that's a level to watch. And all I did was draw a line on this particular candle's high. That's the only information I had, was this candle high, draw a line, and you can see it magically lines up as resistance here, support, support, support. So support and resistance is really important because when you're in a particular trade, you want to know where something might bounce. That doesn't mean it's going to, but you want to know where. So if you're in this trade when it pops through and it's support here, it's consolidating and bounces, if it starts dropping, 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 as long as your entry is close to this support area, you can let it come back down and test this support without being worried about it. And sure enough, what happens? It pops back up. So that's why support and resistance levels are important. It gives you an idea of where your target levels to exit are, and it gives you an idea of where your stop loss should be. So if you're in a trade and it's approaching let's say you're in this trade here, and it's approaching this level here, it broke through it that day but closed above it. So you'd want to know what this level is so that if you're in a trade, you can kind of watch and see what you need to do with that trade as it's getting close to this level. So that's how we use support and resistance. And there's a comment on here that the SMA 200 is that level, which would make sense, right? You're going to see a lot of action, either support or resistance around that 200, depending on what direction it's in. So if that's the level of the 200, then yes, you're going to see a lot of action around there while it's trying to decide if it wants to break above or below one way or another. So again, 77.07, I want to see what it's doing in that area, because it was support here, resistance. The concept again being resistance becoming support, and we're back close to that area. It tried to break through but couldn't, so I want to see if it finally can, and then we can take Duncan to the long side. And one of the things I like again is that we have a double bottom area here. It climbed and it dropped, but it didn't drop all the way down here, so it's making a higher low. So as long as we can break above this and make a higher high, we have that continuation pattern of higher high, higher low, higher high, which would be a bullish scenario. So I want to see it break above that 77.07. Now, if you're in a short-term options trade, here's how we use support and resistance. If you're in a short-term options trade and you know this was a support level, and you know it was resistance here and resistance here, if you're in at 77 and now it's up at 79, you made a $2 move. If you see it stalling out above this 79 area here, that's a good time to trim your position or close it if you only have a small position. If you see it come through this 79 area here and punch through, then you can see it maybe come back down and test as support. But you want to watch the 79 area here. So if you take a trade from 77 to 79 and you see it stalling out, that's a good time to either unload or trim your position, because you know it got pushed down the first time it touched it. You know it got pushed down the second and third time it touched it. So if it touches it again and doesn't go through, or you don't see volume building up under it, that's a good time to trim your position. Let's say you have 10 contracts, maybe you trim 5 of them. If that covers the cost of your entry, then awesome. You have 5 contracts that you know you can't lose money on because the profit from the first 5 covered it. Or maybe you sell 7 of them and keep 3 of them. If you only have 5, maybe you sell 3, keep 2. So there's different strategies on how you would unload a position around support and resistance. But Duncan is one that I want to keep an eye on. Next up, Blue, B-L-U-E, Bluebird Bio. What caught my eye on this is, one, it's on a hell of a downtrend. Look at this though, we have down, 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 down. Look at this candle on the monthly. If you guys know what candles mean and what the different types of candles are, who knows what this particular candle is? What is that showing us? I'll pause for a second and give you guys a second to type in the comment section. That candle on the monthly chart, what is that showing us? There we go, doji, yes. That's what that's called. It's a doji candle, and the next comment is indecision. So that's exactly what it's showing, right? We have downtrend, little pullback, downtrend. Here we go way up here. We get pushed all the way down here, but we close back up here. So it's indecision because the buyers had it, they took it way up here, but then the seller said, nope, we're taking it right back down. But then the buyer said, nope, we're gonna try and take it up. And it closed about where it opened. So the buyers couldn't control it, the sellers couldn't control it. But after a massive downtrend like that, it's showing that the downside momentum has changed. Now it could completely reverse and continue going down, we don't know. But what we do know is that there's a lot of downtrend here, and then there's indecision, and that typically kind of shows us that the trend is going to change. Again, it doesn't have to change, but with a big drop, a big drop, a big drop, and then a drop, but it recovers, again, that's showing us the buyers stepped in a little bit to try to prop it up. If we look at the daily chart, you can see it clearly bottomed out here for a little bit, and we're starting to go on an uptrend. So one of the things I want to look at here is this point here. Since it dropped here, that's obviously a clear point of support. So if we draw a line there, look what we have over here. There's resistance right over here in that area. There was consolidation right over here. It tried to pop, but it couldn't, and then it became resistance. So we're climbing towards that area here. We're still quite a ways away. It's $80.94 right now, and that line is at 87.49. Close enough to call it 87.50. So we're quite a bit of ways from there, but again, on this chart, it's showing me that the downside momentum has changed. Over here, it shows that we kind of bottomed out and then we started to turn to the upside. So this is one of the things I want to keep an eye on. I used to trade blue a long time. This was probably 3 or 4 years ago. Maybe 2 years ago. It was a few years back. I used to trade blue. This one kind of when I first started trading. And I remember trading it in the upper 89 area. It was like 89 and change, which was somewhere around, actually it would have been before this chart. So if we go back to, I'm all the way on the left side here on this monthly chart, I was trading it somewhere around here. And then it went on a massive run. I think I traded it from 89 to like upper 90s, which would be somewhere around this area here. And then you can see it went way up. I was in short-term trading, so I didn't capture from 80 to 236. That would have been insane. But blue is on my radar just because I see it on different scans from time to time, and I remember I had such a good feeling about it because I made a lot of money on it. So again, this candle here shows me the downside momentum is drying up. On the daily, it shows me it's kind of consolidating here, and then it made this move upwards. And then if we take a line from this support here, we can see that it was resistance here. So as it gets to that area, I want to see what it does there. And then there's resistance up here. So we have a little bit of a resistance zone that we'd have to get through here. But we clearly bottomed out and we started turning up. So I want to see if we can get some continuation to that one. So blue is on my radar for that. Yes, there are a lot of tickers, but I want to show you guys a bunch of stuff that I'm looking at. And like I said, again, I'm going to narrow it down from here. But this is just to show you guys some things. If you have no idea what you're looking at over the weekend, maybe you didn't get a chance to do some research, I'm just trying to give you some ideas on what I'm looking at. Maybe it sparks some interest in something that you see. And maybe I'm looking at something completely wrong and you guys can point out, hey, stupid, if you look at this, it's clearly showing that it's not doing what you think it is. So I would love any kind of feedback as far as that goes. But here's Goldman, GS, Goldman Sachs. The reason this one's on my radar is because we had clear resistance here. We tried to pop up, it got pushed down again, false breakout, it got pushed down again, tried to break out again, we're below that line. So this 222 area here, I have it as 222.24, but again, it doesn't have to be an exact number. So anywhere in this lower 222 area, clear resistance here, it didn't quite get that high up, but it got close to it and got pushed back down. False breakout, we're in that area here. Goldman can move. So I'm kind of watching Goldman a little bit here and there throughout the week. It's not on my regular list of charts that I watch, but throughout the week I kind of poke in and just kind of see where it's at. And every now and then I'll get a good trade on it, but I don't watch it regularly. But because this area here is kind of important, for you guys that like chart patterns, it's kind of showing, well, there's two patterns that I can see here. One, I was going to mention the cup and handle. It's got a cup here, and then we see a pullback here to about the mid-level there. So we might have a cup and handle here where we can take off and go to the upward direction. And then the other one is we have a nice up run here, and then we have this little bull flag area here. So maybe this is the pull, this is the flag, and then that candle there would be the breakout. It didn't hold, but Goldman can move. So since we're at this area here where this was resistance in this lower 222 area, I want to see if we can get in that area and then break above and make a nice little run there. Do you guys trade Goldman? Goldman's kind of a popular one, so I would be surprised if no one traded Goldman. Is there anyone on the chat right now that has traded Goldman before, GS? Renee, you trade it. There you go. So you know the movement Goldman can make. Melissa, awesome. Thanks for joining me, by the way. So yeah, Goldman definitely can make some nice moves. It's one of those ones where within the same day, if you're a day trader or a scalper, you can definitely do some damage with GS, Goldman Sachs. PayPal. What do I like about PayPal? Well, we're at another interesting level, this mid 108 area. Because it was resistance here, we're 2 days where we're butting up against that area there. Melissa has a comment, 225 calls. Have been getting some love on Goldman. We can take a look at that. Actually, why don't we go back? Let me see if you guys are not members of Black Box Stocks, that is the scanner that I use for options. Melissa, was that on Friday or has that been building up over? Okay, let's go to historical. Okay, so there's a ton of blocks. A ton of blocks, holy crap. Oh, those are deep in the money. Oh no, those are deep out of the money. No, where are those? Yes, those are deep in the money, okay. So those, we're gonna kind of discount those. Just one that you notice has been coming in at least in the last 2 weeks. There's been a ton of activity, all blocks and pretty deep in the money on these. So yeah, this would be a whole nother seminar. But definitely you want to go back and go check out Goldman. Yeah, there's definitely something going on there, so I want to check that out. But it's because they're all blocks that kind of throws a wrench into it. But I will check out Goldman. So PayPal, like I was saying, PayPal had resistance here and it's right at that level there. So we got rejected Wednesday and Friday. At this mid 108 area, we got rejected here. So that's what caught my eye on PayPal, is just that we're here. If you guys want to take a call position, again, this is a high risk area, because if you take a call position and it gets rejected here, you're gonna have to let it drop way down here to see if it holds as support. So when we talk about high or low risk entry, this would not be a low risk entry unless you're taking puts, because you're hoping for it to be rejected here. And if it does that, you're gonna make money. If it doesn't, you can get out of the trade very quickly with minimal damage, because you know that this is the area you're looking at. So if you're in a put and it goes above this area, you can get out right away with minimal damage. If you're thinking, oh, hey, it's gonna break through resistance, I'm gonna get a call position here, it's a little bit of a higher risk, because if it does get rejected and pulls back, you're gonna sit through a little bit of a pullback before it recovers. So if that's the case, you want to enter down on the pullback instead of way up here. If it punches through up here, you can certainly do a scalp, and then just keep an eye on it to see if it's going to continue or if it's going to kind of false break out or pull back or whatnot. But since it's right up against this resistance here, PayPal is on my list of things to watch. GRUB. GRUB, I like GRUB for a gap fill, but again, this is a bit of a high risk entry. So if you look here, we gapped way down here. We're looking to go way back up here, but since we dropped, where would be a good entry for this? If you look at the high of this candle here, you can see it consolidating above that level for 1, 2, 3, 4 days, where it's just kind of hovering on that level. That's 49 or 39.40. We're now up at 43.12, so we're a good few dollars away from that area. So even though we're going in the right direction for this gap fill, and this is a pretty good size gap to fill, I might want to wait and see if it pulls back to this 39.40 area. If it doesn't, maybe you can take something call side with a tight stop in case it does eventually pull back a little bit. But yeah, so there's a nice gap to fill on GRUB. We're just right now at a point where it's a late entry. You can still get in there. Just again, keep a really tight stop in case it does pull back, or just watch it closely. Maybe don't take something too soon. Give yourself 3, 4, 5 months out on that. But there's a nice gap to fill for GRUB. BYND was on my list, and some of you guys mentioned it when I asked at the very beginning. Here's what's nice about BYND. Look at this. We had a nice run up. This is the monthly chart on the left. We had a big drop down. Look at this candle here. We dropped a little bit, but the buyers stepped in to prop it up. So if we look at the weekly chart, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks where it's just consolidating over here. And then if you look at the daily chart, you can see it clearly, the downside momentum just isn't there anymore. It dried up. Now again, that doesn't mean that we can top out here and continue to drop further. We absolutely can. But what I see here is a nice downside move and then a consolidation area here. It could be consolidating and then getting ready for the next leg down. But if we look at this weekly chart here, we drop, came back up. The next week was red, the next week was green. So it's definitely in an area here where it's just kind of waiting to see what it does. If it continues an upside movement, BYND has a massive daily movement where you can make a ton of money on it. I don't like to play it every day because I've made some great money on it and I've lost a ton of money on it. So BYND is one of those tickers where I have a great day and I'm psyched and can't wait to play it the next day, and then the next day I lose what I made and then some, and then I swear I'm not touching it again. The next day I make money on it, so I'm psyched about it, and the next day I lose it and give it back. So BYND and I just have a relationship where it's up and down. But you can make some just great money on BYND calls. And again, I like it because it has a massive downside movement and we can clearly see some consolidation over here and then a little bit of an upswing here. So BYND is definitely on the radar. WM, if you guys are in our Discord group for Black Box Stocks, I think Jenny B has played or was watching WM. I think it might have been a week or 2 weeks, maybe a little bit longer back. I don't remember the time frame, but I remember she was watching WM. We were talking about it after hours at one point. What I like about it here again is we have a nice upwards run here on the monthly chart. We have 2 months of dropping. November dropped way down here, but the buyers stepped in and pulled it way back up here. So again, this candle kind of shows a little bit of a bullish reversal. We have some downside momentum. It drops big, but then the buyers stepped in and brought it right back up. If we look over here on, I've got a ton of lines. See, for me, 4 lines is a ton of lines. I don't like that many lines on my chart. And one of the awesome things, there we go. I was going to say one of the awesome things about doing live stuff is that when your charts freeze, it messes everything up. Let me see if it's going to let me clear. There we go. So let's do some live support and resistance. If we take the low of this candle right here and we put a line there, coming back over here, we can see support, right? It stays above that line. It's consolidating. It drops here to that level. It's support over here, and it's resistance over here, it's resistance here, and we're right on that line now. So that's the line I'm looking at for WM. We have a nice run, we have a nice little pullback, it pulled back again. Now we're back in this area here that was previously a consolidation area, support, support, and then became resistance there, resistance here. And now we're right at that level there. So WM is one of those tickers I want to watch, keep an eye on. And just kind of see if we can break up and make a nice upward move, or if we're going to reject again and go to the downside. But again, one of the things I like here, we got rejected, we pulled back, but we didn't make a lower low. And in fact, if we draw a line here where we stopped, when we pulled back, we stopped at that same level. And if you go back over here, that was resistance. So again, from before, resistance becoming support. That's a technical analysis kind of, I don't even know the word I'm looking for. Concept. That's a concept in technical analysis where prior resistance becomes support, and it bounced off of that area. So I want to see what it does in this 112.87-ish area. Close enough to maybe 113 area. So somewhere around that 113, I want to see what WM is doing. AXP. And I do have a few more. I apologize for going so long on this, but I do have a few more. And again, you're not going to play every single one of these. I want to give you guys some ideas of what to look for, what I'm looking for, and then maybe write down the tickers. Hopefully you have been. If you liked anything on the specific chart, maybe you write down, and out of the 25 or 30, whatever I have in front of me here, maybe you narrow that down to 5 or 6 that you really want to take a look at because they meet your criteria for a trade. So do not pull up a watch list with every single one of these tomorrow and try to trade every one of them. It's just not going to work. What I'm looking for is the right setups. And again, this is how I go about my weekend routine. And the reason I'm doing it live here is because I didn't have a chance to do it this weekend. So this is what I would do over the weekend typically, is pull up 30 charts that catch my attention. And the way I'm looking at them now, talking to you guys, that's what I would tell myself to try and convince myself there is or there isn't a trade here. So that's kind of what I'm doing here with you guys, is just what I would be doing on my own. And out of these 25 or 30 tickers, once this is over, I'm not going to do the whole thing in front of everyone here, but once this is over, I'm going to go back after the analysis that I'm doing here and pick out of these tickers, which ones do I really like for a trade. And then from there, I'm going to pull up the options chart. I'm going to look at the open interest. I'm going to look at the contracts as far as what they cost, what I think the move can be in the next month or two. And from here, out of these 25 or 30, I'm going to really try and dial in 3, 4, maybe 5 tickers to keep an eye on for this week, and then maybe take a 3-4 month position on some of them. But I am absolutely not going to try and trade every single one of these. This is just my analysis to narrow down my initial list. I run a bunch of scans, write down tickers that interest me for whatever reason, without looking at it, without analysis, without digging in. Something catches my eye, I write it down. And then I'm going through it with you guys. What I would do for the second round is to go through them all and see what caught my eye. And then as I'm going through it, writing these down, I'm going to narrow the list to what catches my eye further for a potential trade. Then from there, I'm going to take some of those, and I'm going to take those and narrow that down into the actual options chain. And I'm going to pull up Black Box because I am a member of Black Box Stocks. So I'm going to pull up Black Box Stocks, and I'm going to look at the options flow around those tickers. So again, my process is scanners, multiple scanners. Anything that catches my eye, don't analysis, just write it down. Step 2 is what I'm doing here, is taking those 30 tickers and going through to see what caught my eye, and out of that, is it realistic to trade it? If it is, write that down on a separate list, and at the end of this, hopefully that list is only going to be 5 to 10. Then I'm going to pull up any kind of options flow. I'm going to look at the options chain, and out of those 10, I'm really going to try and find 1, 2, 3, maybe 5 max that are actually actionable trades that I can take. So this is only step 2 of like a 3 or 4, maybe 5-step process, depending on how deep I want to go with it. So AXP, it's holiday time. Everyone likes to charge, right? What's interesting about AXP? We had a little bit of a pullback on the monthly. And here's how you can read some candles with a little bit of kind of foresight as to the last ones I was looking at, where I said it brought it way back down and the buyers pulled it up. And that's typically a reversal. Here's how it plays out, right? The next month, this one actually did reverse and start moving upwards. So we had this big drawdown here. It found support, and the buyers stepped in to prop it way back up here. That shows the buyers are trying to take some control, and the very next month, that candle moves upwards and turns green. So again, candles like this can show you that when it drops way down here, the buyers stepped in to buy it. That could be the point where it's going to reverse. And on this monthly chart, it happened to actually do that. So that's how we like to see these candles play out. Why do I like AXP? Well, it caught my attention because we had prior resistance becoming support. It became resistance, it became resistance, a little bit of support, and where we are now, we're right on that area here. So is this going to go up or is it going to go down? Here's a secret in the stock market that a lot of these big gurus don't want to tell you. The secret is we have absolutely no clue. Yes, I know that's not a secret, but it's surprising to hear someone say they have no clue, because everyone tells you exactly what they think the chart is going to do. Here's the deal. We use technical analysis if you're a technical analysis trader. If you're a fundamentals person, you use fundamentals. You have an idea of where you think the stock is going to go based on information. It's an idea based on information. The market really doesn't care what you think. It can completely void out your opinion. So since we're on a support resistance line, this is a good area for you to enter a trade, because if you're wrong, whatever direction it's going in, you know you're wrong right away. So you don't have to wait for a $14 drop to find out if you're wrong. It's 120 area that this line is drawn. So if you think it's going up and it drops, you can get out right at 120 or a little bit lower, and you're not going to lose a lot of money. If you think it's going to drop and it goes up, you can get out around this 120 area and not lose a lot of money. So we're at a point where prior resistance became support, became resistance again, and we're hovering right around this area. So for me, it's not a matter of taking a trade and hoping it goes in the right direction and stopping out quickly if it doesn't. It's a matter of waiting to see what direction it's actually going to go in. And then once it goes in that direction, if it's wrong from there, you can get out pretty quickly without the damage. So I'm going to wait for the actual confirmation of going up or down. But one thing I like about AXP is it's right on that line that was a prior support resistance line. So that's why I'm watching this one, because it's right in that area where I like to see which direction is it going to go. And then I can play that direction, and if I'm wrong, I can get out really quickly with minimal damage. I'm not going to get hurt too bad if I'm entering as close to support and resistance as possible. Question from Renee, why not wait until it makes the move? That's what I'm saying. Right? So if you enter on support and resistance, you can get out with minimal damage. What I'm saying is I want to wait and see which direction it's going to pick. And then from there, I'm going to follow that direction. But if that's a false move, I can get out pretty quickly because I'm entering right on support and resistance. So for me, like I said, with AXP, I want to see if it goes up or down. If it goes up, let's say we open tomorrow and we start seeing an upward movement, that for me would be a call. If it's a false move and it drops, let's say I'm in way up here at 121. And then it drops below to, let's say, 119.79, which is the low of this candle, I believe. I'm going to get out with minimal damage. So if I'm in up here at 121 and I'm trying to wait for it to go down here to test this support at 116, that call is going to be toast. You're going to basically lose all of it, depending on how much time you have. So I don't want to enter something and let it get way down here. So if it starts making an upwards movement, and it crosses below this level, I can get out because I'm entering as close to this line as possible. I'm not waiting for it to make a $6, $7, $8 drop to see if I'm wrong. So yeah, I'm not going to take the trade and hope it goes in my direction. That, to me, that's not trading, that's just hoping. We don't like to do that. Any trade can go up or down. So if you pick a call or a put, you have a 50% chance of being right. It's going to go up or it's going to go down. It can go sideways, and if you're an options trader, sideways is as good as down. So you can absolutely take a call or a put and just cross your fingers and close your eyes. But for me, what I want to see is the confirmation, because it's right on that line right here. So what I want to see is I want to see it go up, open above, and close above this line. Open below and close below this line. And that's going to be the direction I would take it in. And if I'm wrong, I can get out as quickly as possible with this 120 area as my stop, because I know right away I was wrong. So you're going to get out with minimal damage. So that's what I liked about AXP, American Express. LRCX. LRCX can move. And because it can move, here's what I like about LRCX. Let's look at the monthly chart. We have a big upswing. We had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 months in a row of green, and November closed red. If we look over here, we had some consolidation, it popped, kind of pulled back a little bit, popped again, made a new 52, came back down. This 267 area was support for this candle, and now we're sitting just below that area. We're at 266.83, so we're about 40 cents below that area, which means, to me, if we open below, or even if we open a little bit above and then we give it up and start giving back some of that pop, this is a good short. Because again, we go to the monthly candles, we've got green, 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 green. We have our first red on the monthly. We have a support line for this candle, and we broke through it, we closed below it. So if we can close below, we also have this little gap fill right down here. This was 252-ish, and this is 235-ish, so there's a nice gap fill down here. So if we can't hold this 267 line as support, we close below it, but if we open above and move on an upwards direction, we can make a move towards this 52-week high. And that's actually an all-time high, I believe. Looking on the monthly chart, 285.87, so that's going to be an all-time high, unless the chart goes further back than what I'm showing here. So if we can stay above this 267, let's say we get a green day tomorrow and we start moving up, then we can look at this area here, 280 to 286, and look for that new 52-week or all-time high. But if we can't hold this 267 area, or if we get a red day and we just bleed off a little bit, there is a gap fill down here to the downside. And because LRCX can move, If you get a 265 put and then it goes way down here to 245, that's going to be a nice trade. So LRCX is one of the ones that I'm watching. 5 more to go, guys. We're almost done. I know this has been taking quite a while, but again, this is my initial list from the scan. I did not have this narrowed down. So the analysis right now is basically taking that very first list I have. So it definitely takes a lot longer than normal because I did not filter any of these after the initial scan that shows me there's something about this ticker that I like. So it does take a little bit long for stage 1 because I'm taking all these tickers that I liked but didn't look at the chart to figure out why I liked. There was something that caught my eye. So on LRCX, what caught my eye is that we have red or green, 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 green in the first red candle. And then I come over here, I can draw a resistance or a support line right here and I can see we're closing. So I write that down. I don't look at it any further than that. That's all I needed to see and I write that down. The next step is to look at it a little bit further and say, okay, that is a good monthly candle to the red side. We had on the weekly, we popped up here, but we closed below it. We couldn't hold that area. It was support, it was support. We broke it, but came back above it, but we couldn't make a new high. We broke below it again. So that's the second stage analysis. So I like that to the downside. So as long as we close or open and close below this line tomorrow, I'm looking not necessarily for this gap fill, but a move in that direction towards that gap fill. If we open and stay above this line, then I'm looking for a move towards this 52 or actually all-time high. So this line, 267-ish, that's an important line for me for LRCX. That's one of those things I want to watch to make sure it stays below that line. There's a gap to fill. If it comes back and stays above that line, we can make a new all-time high. And LRCX can move. So that's one of the ones I like because you can get a single contract on that and make $600, $700, $800. The next one, CHWY, Chewy. What do I like about Chewy? The company, I don't know, not much. I haven't followed it, but a friend of mine has been in this particular ticker and was constantly complaining that it wasn't doing much or it was dropping. So it's been on my radar, but look at this. And it's a relatively new issue, so we don't have a lot of history on it, but we have drop, 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 indecision candle, right? Look at this huge drop here, and then this candle, it dropped a little bit. The buyers said, we're gonna take it up, and then the seller said, no, you're not, but it dropped right to the low here. And look at this candle, it went way down here, and then the buyer stepped in and said, nope, we're not letting it drop further, and it closed just about this area here. So just on the monthly chart, you can see, again, the downside momentum has slowed down. The buyers finally stepped in, but they couldn't control it. It closed down here. It comes way down here on November. The buyers stepped in and brought it way back up. So the buyers are stepping in to take a little bit of control on CHWY. And if you look at the weekly chart, you can see we had some support here, support here, support here. This candle broke through, but it closed above. This candle, the low was just about that area here. Flip over to the daily. Here's our support. You can see it clearly consolidating on that line. And then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 green candles in a row. So this is the daily, so that's 5 days in a row of upward movement. So you can clearly see some consolidation and you can clearly see an upside swing here. So what we're trying to see is whether or not there's kind of a level right here to watch, 25.21-ish, 25.25, 25.30, pick your number, somewhere in that level there. If we can clear that level, and here to make it easier, we'll put a line in there. And the reason I'm choosing that line is because when it popped up here, it dropped, and you can see 1, 2, 3, 4 candles here where that was support. And then it started climbing, but it gave it back. So it's consolidating here. As it approaches that line, I want to see if we can pop again or if it's going to give it back. If it gives it back, we have a downside movement. I don't know how the contracts move on this one, but I do know there are contracts available, and I do know a few people that have traded it. So it was on my radar for this particular reason, but I don't know the contracts and how they move. So the next step of research on Chewy, CHWY, would be to look at the contracts, pull them up, and see if there's enough movement in there to get a short term, or if we need to do a longer term. Check the open interest, check options flow. There's a few things I want to do after this. But what I like here is there's some clear consolidation in this area, and then we had a nice upward movement. So I want to see if this level here that was prior support, if that becomes resistance and we drop, or if we can punch through that and make a move towards this level up here. So that is CHWY. eBay is up next. What did I like about eBay? Look over here on the monthly chart. We had a double top here. We had some red, some red, some red, and then we have this green indecision candle. The sellers took over and dropped it. The buyers stepped in and bought it, and it settled somewhere in the middle. So maybe the downside momentum is over. If you look at the weekly chart, look at this level here. It was support for 1, 2, 3, 4, like 5 weeks. A little bit of resistance over here, but it's kind of choppy in this area. But here it's clear support over here. And here we had a false breakdown. Now, we popped a little bit, but then we gave it back. So this 35, 45-ish area, I'm kind of watching to see what it does. You can see on the daily chart, it's clear support, it's clear support, it's clear support. And this is not the support resistance seminar. I do have one of those planned. I have had one planned for a while, so I do owe you guys a good support resistance seminar. But one thing you can clearly see is that every time it gets to this 35, 45 area, it dropped there, but then it bounced. 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 So if you don't know why 35, 45 is important, doesn't matter. If you're in this trade, you need to know that something about 35, 45, the sellers can't bring it down below that level. Which means every time it gets to 35, 45, the buyers step in and say, I want more of it at this price. It came back up, it came back down. The buyer said, oop, I like it at that price, I'm going to buy more. It came back down again. The buyer stepped in and said, oop, I like it at that price again, I want more, and they drive it up. When it finally gets here, the buyers finally said, you know what, I don't want it at that price anymore, and that's why we see it drop below. So support and resistance is just another name for supply and demand. If you're trading, it is very important to know supply and demand. Where do people want to own this ticker? And at what price is it too expensive that they just don't want it at that price anymore? It hits this level, I'm buying. It hits this level, I'm buying. It hits this level, I'm buying. It hits this level, you know what, I don't really like it anymore, I'm not buying anymore. And then we see the demand dries up. That's going to bring the ticker price down. So you can see that here. It dropped, buyer stepped in. 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 It dropped. At this point, the buyers are going, you know what? I'm not buying any more of it because it's not doing what I need it to do, or it's just not attractive at this price anymore. And eventually it fell through. So right now we're hovering again right on that line there. We closed just a little bit above it. So if this level can hold, I want to see this gap fill here. We have a 38-ish area here for this gap. So if this level holds, I want to see an upward movement towards filling this gap. If this level does not hold, look at this. It was support, support, support. So what's the concept from before? Support becomes resistance. So if it was support over here, once it breaks through this level, you can take a downward position, and anytime it pops, you would expect it to pop to this level, but then get rejected again because prior support is becoming resistance. So if we break below this level, you can take a downside position, and if it pops, you would expect it to pop here and get rejected. If this level holds, I want to take a longer position and look for this gap fill here, because there's a decent gap there between, say, mid 36s to 38s. So a nice $2 move. If you can get a $2 gap fill on this with a month or 2 months out, that would be a nice trade. If it drops below this level here, because this was such a strong support, obviously we would look for this level here. This is where it dropped and stopped. So we would look for this level here. And here's the interesting thing about support and resistance. If we draw that support line there, come way back over here and look, it was resistance for 2 candles. So again, there's something significant about that 34.50 area. It was resistance here, but it became support. So it's one of those things where you just want to know what these levels are. So again, if this 35.45 area does not hold, there's a downside movement we can see. And there's actually a gap to fill to the downside way back over here. If this 35.45 area holds, I want to see some upside movement to fill this gap to the upside. So eBay is one of those ones I'm looking at there. 3 more, and then we are done. Yum. YUM. 4 lines on a chart for me is too many. It is too crowded, so I'm going to clear all of those off. What did I like about this one? Look at the monthly chart. We had big downside movement, and then we had this one here. Does anyone know, for the candle formation traders out there, do you guys know what this candle is called? Go ahead and type it in the chat room or the chat comment section if you know what that final monthly candle is called. If not, that's okay, we will move on. I don't see any comments, so either you don't know, you don't want to answer, or you're sleeping, which is perfectly acceptable because I've been rambling for over an hour. There's one, hammer, there it is. So that is called a hammer. So when we see downside movement and then a hammer candle, that again, typically, not all the time, but what it shows us is there's a possible reversal coming. And if you don't know what the actual formations are and what they're called, that's fine, but let's take a look at what it actually means. Because what it's called, who cares what it's called? What we want to know is, what does it mean and how does it affect us? So what does this mean? Well, what this means is this is a monthly candle. So this is the action across all of November. November, it opened up over here around the upper 101 area. It made a high over here, a little bit above 102. The low was way down here at 96, 93-ish, but then it closed up here in the upper 100 area. So if you don't know that this is called a hammer, who cares? What is it showing us? That's the important part. And what it's showing us is that it opened up here, it closed here, but some point in the month it went way down here, and the buyer stepped in and said, I like it at that price, I want it. And what did they do? They bought it right back up. So it got all the way down here, and the buyer said, that's a price where it's attractive, I'd like to own it at that price. They stepped in and they propped it up, brought the price way back up here. If you look at the weekly chart, we had a big gap down here. The gap won't show on the weekly chart because the gap happened within the week. But you have this big red candle, and then you can see this candle here, it was bought back up. On the daily is where you'll see it. There's a big gap in here. So YUM was obviously on my gap scan. So we had a big gap down. You can see a little bit of support over here. So if we draw a line down here, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 candles that touch that line, and they don't fall below it. So 97.47, again, don't look at exact numbers. Sometimes you'll see support and resistance is an exact number, and every time it hits that exact number, it stops or it reverses in that whatever direction. So sometimes it is an exact number, but a lot of times it's an area. And again, I don't want to get into a lot of support and resistance because that's a whole nother seminar that can take another hour, 2 hours on its own. But what I want you guys to know is that 97.50-ish area, somewhere in that mid 97, we had 7 candles touch and it couldn't break below it. So there's something about that 97.50 area that buyers want to step in and buy it at that price. It could be, as someone stated before, there might be a moving average there, in which case the algos might be stepping in to just automatically make those purchases because let's say it comes down, hits the 200-day moving average, and algo's going to step in and buy it there and prop it up. So there's something about mid 97 area that 7 candles touched it, but it couldn't drop below, and then it started an upward swing. There's 4 days where it moved up. So what I'd like to see on this one is this potential gap fill. It dropped to 103.60 here, and the gap is way up here at 109, almost 109.60. So that's a good $6 move there. Now, is it going to go from here to there? No. It's possible, but probably not. Maybe we see a pop, a pullback, a pop, a pullback with a higher low, and then it goes. Maybe it goes straight up. Maybe it goes straight down and never completes it. We don't know. Again, I'm going to be an honest trader and tell you I have no idea what's going to happen with this ticker in the future. What I do know is my support and resistance levels. So as it hits a support level, buyers are going to step in and prop the price up. And as it hits a resistance level, sellers are going to step in and sell it. So when I have those levels in mind, I have an idea of where supply and demand is, which means I have an idea of where it's going to go and possibly stop. So whether this goes up or down, I have absolutely no idea. What I do know is this 97.50-ish area is a strong support level here because it tried a few times and could not break below that, and now we have an upward swing. We have a gap to fill here. Again, technical analysis, there's a term that says gaps will typically fill. I think they typically say gaps are always going to fill. It's obviously not always 100%, but if there's a gap like this, in technical analysis, we say the gap is going to fill. Whether it fills here or not, we don't know. But at some point, we would expect the price to be back up here to fill in this gap on the chart. And again, I'm not going to go into a whole technical analysis spiel here, but this gap here, in technical analysis, we would expect at some point to be filled. So somewhere in this chart, 109.50, we would expect the price to go back up here and fill in this gap here. 97.47 is a good support. If we're up here at 101, I don't necessarily want to buy it here because if it goes to test support, those calls are going to be toast. If it keeps going up and up and up, there's a point where you have to decide where's the low risk entry. But there is a nice gap to fill on YUM. So that's what I'm looking at with YUM, Y-U-M. Second to last one, and I promise you I will let you guys go, or we can sit and chat because I'm a chatterbox. But I have two more for you. So for those that don't want to stick around and spend their entire Sunday with me, I don't blame you, first of all. And second of all, there's only two more. So let's get to it. HUN, H-O-N, Honeywell. What do I like about Honeywell? If we look at the monthly chart, we have resistance right up here. Over on November, we went way up here, but we closed down here. But that 178.40 that was resistance for this particular month, we closed at it. So is prior resistance going to become support? Let's take a look at the daily chart. Here's where it was resistance. We punched through, but it wasn't super strong. We had a nice movement upwards from 178 to 183, so we had a nice movement upwards, but it didn't hold it. It came back down, but it found support down here. Again, if you're new to support and resistance, here we go. Let's draw a line down there where it was support. Because it came way down there, it touched that line and it bounced up. So that's what we call support. If you look over here, that's resistance. So resistance became support. Sometimes technical analysis looks like magic. Sometimes we're super smart when we say, oh, it should hit 175.40 and then bounce. And when it does it, we look like geniuses. We're not a genius. We just know where the supply and the demand are. If there's demand at 175.40, and it drops to 175.40, the people that want it at that price are going to buy it. That's just called demand. It doesn't make me a genius to say it's going to stop at 175.40 and reverse. It tells me that I kind of know that there's a demand area there. So when it hits that area, buyers are going to step in and buy it and send it back up. It's magical sometimes, but it works. And it works because it's psychology. It works because it's supply and demand. It works for a lot of reasons. And I owe a lot of people a support and resistance seminar, and I promise there is one coming at some points. But for now, all I'm going to say is this was prior resistance and it became support in that area, and then it bounced up. It was resistance right here, and we're right at that line there. So one of the things I'm looking at is this prior resistance level. Is it going to hold this support now and make a move upwards, or is it going to give that up and are we going to drop downwards a little bit? So that is HON, Honeywell. And last but not least, NOW, Service Now. Here's, again, let's look at how, this is with a little bit of looking back. So on the other charts where I said we had this indecision candle, this is how it played out. All right, we go way up here, but it drops. We have a month of down, a month of down, a month of up and down. This is the indecision candle. It went way up here. The seller said nope, but then the buyer said nope, and then it closed in the middle. The next candle, how it played out, the buyers took control. So we're on a downswing. The sellers took it down further. The buyers said, no, we're going to step in. But then the seller said, you're not getting it way up there, but it closed here. This upper wick shows that the buyers are stepping in to try and prop it up. The sellers were too strong because they brought it down. But then how did that indecision candle play out? The next candle was green and it took it back up. So one of the things I'm looking at here is, what am I looking at? Now, this is what I'm looking at here for NOW was a bull flag. So we had a big run over here, and then we have some consolidation. So big upward movement, and then some sideways action. So there's a few things we're going to look at here. In a bull flag, it's a bullish pattern. We see a big upward run, but then the strength kind of just loses strength to the upside. So it's going to go sideways for a little bit. There's going to be some consolidation. There's going to be some profit taking. There's going to be some sellers in there. So we have this big upward movement, and then it just stalls out a little bit and goes sideways. But you can see the last 2 days, Wednesday and Friday, it went upwards. So if we zoom in on this level here, we have this big upward movement, then it goes sideways a little bit, and then we can start seeing it curl up a little bit and start making that upward movement. So if we can break above this level here, we have a nice movement to the upside for that bullish, that bull flag formation. And that is kind of all that I had. Someone said shop earlier. I've got a lot of crap on my shop list. Let's take a look. So if you look over here, I had this kind of congestion zone for shop. It played out a few times over the past year. We're right at that area here. We broke just barely above it and got pushed back on Friday. Wednesday we broke above, closed below it. Friday we pushed above it, closed below it. So this 340, 341-ish area is a resistance level. You can see it got pushed down here, pushed down here, pushed down here, tried to break above it. That's a false breakout. Over here we have a high, a low, a higher high. So if we can make a higher low, we have that higher high, higher low continuation pattern. So 341, this area here, I want to watch and see what shop is going to do in that area. If we can break above that, we want to see it come down and hold 341-ish as support and then bounce and make an upward swing from there. Someone mentioned ISRG. ISRG had a nice video out a week or two ago about a robot doing some surgery. I think it was an apple where they peeled the apple and kind of made a hole and stitched it together, and there was I don't think it was just an apple. There's probably a few things they did on, but I don't remember the video in entirety, but I remember looking at it going, wow, that's pretty damn awesome. So ISRG had a nice video on a surgical robot that was new. We got a little pop on that. If you look back here, this was resistance over here. We cleared through it. We made a new 52-week. It's probably an all-time high, actually. And we closed just below it. So when you close just below the high, that's kind of a bullish sign. Red day in the market. We closed, it's 0.28% up, so it's not huge. And it's an expensive stock, so it's not going to be a huge percentage or dollar. But ISRG is looking pretty good. We broke above this. So as long as this 589-ish area holds, we're good. If it pulls back to that area, you're still pretty good. I want to see it pull back and maybe bounce and then go higher. So ISRG is looking pretty good. I like that company. I don't do too much as far as the fundamentals. Actually, I don't do anything fundamentals for the most part. So I don't know how strong the company actually is, but chart-wise, I like the chart on it. And again, one thing on the chart that's great, we have a high, we have a low. We have a higher high, a higher low. Topped out here a little bit, but then we made a higher low still, a higher high, a higher low. So it's clearly in that higher high, higher low pattern. So ISRG is on a nice little uptrend. Someone mentioned AZO. AZO, actually, I was looking at some point because I clearly have lines drawn on the chart already. So one thing we can notice here is there was resistance here for AZO. It didn't get quite up to that level yet before it got pushed down. 1, 2, 3, 4 candles touch this 1186.60, and it got pushed down. It did make a new high on Friday. That's a good sign, but it couldn't get above this level here. It obviously got above it because it made a new high. But if we draw the line at the high of this point here, and then we see 1, 2, 3 candles, 4 candles get pushed down, that's kind of the area that I'm looking at. And because it's such a large dollar amount per share, it's $1,186 per share, the fact that it made a $2 move above that and got pushed down, I'm not necessarily, I mean, you want to draw your new high point, your resistance line at 1188, but I'm going to keep this 1186 here because it's close enough, and it made that high and then got pushed down. So whether it's 1186 or 1188, a $2 difference on a stock that's over $1,100 is not that significant. But we can see there's clearly some kind of resistance here where it got rejected here, got rejected here, got rejected 1, 2, 3 more times, and then it made a high on Friday but got rejected yet again. So that's clearly an area that I want to keep an eye on. BMY, someone posted BMY. BMY, I've got a few lines on the chart already. So there's a few things over here on the monthly chart. We had green, 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 and then we have this indecision candle, which shows that maybe the upside momentum is coming to an end. Over here, if we zoom in on this section, we had a nice run, we had a little bit of down, and then we had, again, this indecision. This doji candle is showing the buyers took it up here, the sellers took it up here, and it closed right in the middle. So there's a tug of war between the buyers and the sellers over here. And then on the daily, I don't know. So this 56.70 line, that looks like I drew the line somewhere in this area here because it was resistance here. I don't know how far back I was looking at BMY. I know I've traded it a few times, so I don't know how old these lines are on my chart. But I had a line 56.71. So it's showing some resistance over here. It's probably not a super strong line that I would really be watching because there's clearly some movement below that. I think the room took some BMY positions. I think I have a small position in BMY myself. We saw some flow come in on it the other day. It clearly had a nice run, then a pullback, and then it's on a bit of an upswing again, but it wasn't so strong on Friday. But again, Friday was a pretty low volume day. It was a holiday. Thursday, we had a half day Friday. We'll see what we look like tomorrow. And that's about all I had for you guys. So if you have any questions, type away in the chat room. I will certainly answer them. I know this has been a long kind of review of some charts. Thank you guys for sticking around. I'm here to answer any questions if I brought something up that you liked and want some confirmation on, or if you strongly disagree on something I said, please, by all means, bring that up too. I'm not a market god. I can be wrong. So the more eyes on a chart, the better it is. So if you guys have anything that you see that says, hey, you know what? I hear you, but I don't agree with you. Here's why. Please, please, please bring it up to my attention, because the more eyes on a chart, it just means there's more perspective on what it might do, and that's just going to make us all better traders. Jungle Juice says there's a couple alerts on it last week in case you guys are wondering. Speed Racer, what's up, Speed Racer? Speed Racer and Renee, you are welcome. If you guys have any tickers you want to look at, throw them out there. Bender had a play on BMY. Yeah, I think I was in, I remember that day. I think I was in like a minute or two before him, or a minute or two after, because I remember as soon as he posted the thing, I was already on the new form that we have and I was testing it out, the form that goes out to private Twitter. I was testing it out, and I think BMY was the first trade I did that I tested that form out. And I remember seeing Bender's on there too, so I'm like, oh, this is cool. So I have confirmation from Bender in the play. Anytime Bender's in a play that I'm in, I feel a lot more comfortable because Bender is an awesome trader. So if I'm in a play that he's also in the same play for, it's just that extra confirmation that it's a good play. I'm still in mine. I don't know if he's still in his. I am down on that one currently. I don't have my trading platform in front of me, so I don't know how much I'm down, but I know I am down in that particular trade, but I have time on it. So I'm not too worried about it as of yet. But please manage those trades from alerts, just because if it turns against you, it's your money. So even though we get an alert on something, if you don't like it, please, please, please get out of that trade before you wait for the flow to tell you that that trader got out of the trade. NOC, here's something cool about NOC. If you look at the monthly chart, there's 3 months it couldn't get above this area. This level here, rejected again. This level here, rejected again. If you look on the weekly, you can see where it builds up under that 359-ish. And again, that's close enough to 360, so we'll use 360 as our area. And yeah, Renee, perfect comment. Everything was down Friday, right? So if you're in a long-term position and the market is down and you have a particular trade that's down, it's not a big deal because the whole market is down. So it doesn't necessarily mean your trade is bad. It just means it's a down day. So as long as you have time on that, you're good to go. And yes, there is possible news coming out that could help us out. We're hoping it's the right direction. We don't trade on hope, so if it's not the right direction, don't hope it turns around. Obviously, manage that trade. But who said NOZ? Max. Max, let's look at so NOC is, you can see build up over here, and it just can't get above that 359-ish, 360 area. When it does on the weekly chart, we can zoom in over here. You can see it holds it for a few weeks, and then it's resistance over here for a few weeks. So that 360 area is something I want to take a look at. On the daily, it's a little more clear. We've got support, 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 support. Then we got resistance and resistance. So this 360-ish area looks like it's going to be resistance. If we take the low of this candle here, we can see some action over here, a little bit over here. So 346.80-ish, somewhere in there. I'd like to see that hold if you're in a long position. If you want to see to the short side, if that area drops, we've got a nice downward swing from 347-ish to about 335. So if that 346.80-ish area, if that doesn't hold, we have some nice downside movement there. You still cried when your position goes down? Yes. I think I shed a tear or two on Friday myself. Which platform do I trade on? I trade on eTrade Pro, and I chart on Thinkorswim. My backup charting when I'm too lazy to open Thinkorswim, because I have like 17 charts on Thinkorswim that open all at the same time. When I don't feel like waiting for that to open, not that it takes super long, but when I don't feel like waiting for that, I do pull up TradingView. I have the free program on TradingView, so I don't have all the bells and whistles that some of you guys might have. But I chart on Thinkorswim with TradingView as a backup, and I execute my trades on eTrade Pro. For those of you that don't know, I am pretty much strictly options trading, preferably short term. My big joke was long-term trades for me are anything over 7 minutes. I am a very short-term trader for the most part. I used to be a swing trader. I stopped doing that when all of my swings would be up 20-30% one day and I didn't take it, and the next day they were down 20 or 30%. So now I'm at a point where I'm starting to slowly get back into some swing trading. I do like to have an open swing or two for every like 3, 4, 5 day trades that I do. So the charts that I'm going through tonight are kind of what's setting up for this week for a swing trade. And again, a lot of the people on Blackbox were asking, hey, you guys don't do a lot of swing trades. Can you help us out with that? So I tried to post a little bit of a swing trade here and there just for people that want some swing trade action that don't always get it, because the chat room for Blackbox is always, hey, I'm in. Oops, I'm out. Hey, I'm in. Oh, I'm already out. I'm in. Hey, 7 minutes. I made 400%. I'm out. So a lot of us do really quick short-term trading. But there's a lot of people that like to swing and don't get a lot of swing action on Blackbox. So one of the things I wanted to do when I do these weekly reviews is just kind of look for something where you can put some money in and just kind of let it sit there. If you have a bad day, no problem, because you've got 3 months, 4 months, So tonight's charts, we're basically looking for some of those longer term setups. You can see if you go back through, a lot of these were gap fills that I'm looking for. Those aren't necessarily going to be a month out. A gap fill might be 3 months out, 4 months out, 6 months out, maybe take an ER or two. So a lot of what I was scanning for on this list was some of the longer term plays that we can actually swing, put $300 or $400 per contract into it. If you have a small account, buy 1 contract. If you have a medium account, buy 5. If you have a big account, 10, 20, whatever it is. But even on a small account, if you have a single contract that's $300 and it goes up 50%, $150 on a small account, it's pretty good. So I was trying to find some tickers where we might have some longer term action, and for me, longer term is relative. But I was trying to find some stuff where we might have 2, 3, 4 months of time that we can put some money into and just let it sit there. And if you have a bad day, don't stress over it because you have time. So that's why I like a lot of the gap fills for the technical term that, gaps are going to fill at some point. So if you have a 3, 4, 5 month position on something that has a gap to fill, I like those because you can put some money in and just let it sit there. You don't have to worry about it down day because you have 3 months of time. And you're playing for that probability of the gap actually filling. MSI, Motorola. One thing I can see right off the bat with Motorola, there's kind of a wedge. We have, let's see if it plays out nicely. We have that little wedge right there. That's not really a great one. This is kind of a good support line because you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 touches. This one's kind of bad because it's just 1, 2. So anytime you draw a support or resistance line, you want it to touch at least 3 times. So the fact that there's 1 touch here and 1 down there, that's not really a strong support or resistance line. But this one's good. We're on a bit of an upswing. The thing here, you can see these candles are kind of small. We have big downside candle, little green, big downside, little green, little, big downside, little, bigger. So we're slowly inching our way up. So there isn't a lot of momentum in either direction. So one of the things we want to see here is there's a little bit of a support resistance line somewhere around here in this 168.80. You can see it was resistance for this candle. It was support in here for a few weeks, actually for a few days. This is the daily. It was resistance over here. It's resistance here, and then we're coming right up on that. So we're building up a little bit under this resistance line. So if we put a line right about there, again, we're building up kind of right under it. So if we punch through there, we're good. One thing that's nice, look at this volume candle. So this yellow line on my chart, that's the average volume. If you see this green bar right here, that is huge volume on this particular day, which was this candle. It did get rejected at that resistance line, but we had some nice volume on there. So we're building up under this resistance. So it'd be nice to see a nice little pop on that one. Is there a reason why I use E-Trade? E-Trade, I was getting good fills on E-Trade. I like to use market orders to get in and out of trades. I don't like to mess around with limits. When I want in, I just want to be in. I don't want to set a limit order, not get filled, change the limit order, maybe not get filled, change it again. So with E-Trade, I was getting really good fills on market orders, so I didn't have to worry about changing the limits. And I like the platform. It's not as powerful as charting as TOS, so I like to use Thinkorswim for my charting. But I'm comfortable with E-Trade. I like the features on it. I was getting good fills for market orders, so I didn't have to mess around with limit orders. A buddy of mine used to work at E-Trade, which is why I first got into E-Trade. And then from there, I've traded on it forever. I switched over to Tasty and didn't like the fills on Tasty at all, so I eventually pulled my money out of Tasty. So now my primary account is back at E-Trade. Any other questions? Any other tickers you guys want to pull up? Any questions on general trading and why I was looking at something here? If you disagreed with anything I saw, please, again, I'm not insulted. Please, please, please speak up and say, hey, you know what? I think you were looking at that chart wrong. I love to get second opinions on what I'm doing because, again, I'm not a master. I'm comfortable with what I can do, but I do make plenty of mistakes, just like every other trader out there. So if you see something differently from me, I love to get that feedback that says, hey, dummy, you're not looking at this and it's right in front of your face. So by all means, if you see something you didn't like or didn't agree with, I am not offended. I won't yell at you. Please bring it up. We can take a look at it. If you have other tickers, now is the time. Put them in that chat section there and we'll get to you. I'll pull up the chart and give you a quick view of what I see on it. RSI or MACD? Renee, I don't. So for indicators, the only indicator I use is the 34 exponential moving average. I will occasionally use VWAP. I don't use the upper and lower VWAP. So on my busiest screen, I literally have two lines, which was going to be the VWAP and then the exponential moving average 34. And other than that, I just don't like things on my screen. I like it as clean as possible. So if there's a ticker that had like probably, let me find one that might have a lot on it. I can't really. So I'm just randomly going through tickers right now. You can see that I typically don't have a lot of lines on any chart. And this is just, I'm trying to find one that does have a lot of lines. There we go. So this is the busiest chart that I'll have. And you can see here there's two congestion support resistance zones, one here, one here. Then I have a resistance level up here for the one I was trading. And if I'm trading this, this is going to be on a daily or a 1 or 5 minute chart, maybe a 3 minute chart. And none of these lines are going to show up on the 3 minute chart or a 1 minute chart. So I don't use RSI, I don't use MACD, I don't use a lot of indicators and blinking lights and flashing this. I like my screens as clear as possible. So I pretty much do not have anything on my charts. Which is why I said, if you guys see something on a chart, indicator-wise, that I'm not looking at, bring it up, because I don't look at indicators. So if I'm looking at something that's bullish and your indicators say completely bearish, by all means, that's something I'm not paying attention to because I'm just looking at candles and volume. I do use the 34 exponential moving average. And I will use VWAP, but I don't trade on these charts. These are my research charts, the monthly, weekly, and daily. That's my research. When I'm trading, I'm on a 1 minute, 3 minute, 5 minute. ADSK. Did I have that on my, I thought that was on my list. That is not on my list. Oh, that's the one I was just looking at. That's the super busy one. So ADSK is on a massive run right now. It started off down here at the 140 area over here. Not sure if it's my internet, but screen is blurry. If that's the case, I am so sorry because this is a complete waste of time if you couldn't see any of that. It's a little harder to see on smaller screens, which is what I'm not used to because the screen I'm looking at is a 55-inch TV. So I apologize if it's hard to see for you guys. It's on a massive screen in front of my face. I'm 1.5 feet away from a 55-inch TV, so everything's super clear for me. So if there was something you wanted to see in better detail, send me a DM or just leave a comment below. Can you leave comments below? I don't know if you can leave comments on YouTube Live. You can leave comments in the chat section. I'll go back through that. Send me a comment on Twitter at 7starmike for a chart, and I'll send it to you in a little bit clearer view. So ADSK has clear resistance up here, and we're right at that area here. We punched through it with, if you look down here at the volume, there's some good volume the last few days, right? So we had this massive run over here. We're still in an upward direction. We broke above this. So any pullback, I'd want to see it hold this 178.95. Let's call it 179. If it does have any pullback, I'd like to see it hold there. If not, we're going to drop down probably to this 175-ish area. So any pullback, I'd like to see it hold there, and then we can take off. We have blue skies ahead of us. That thing is on a nice $40 run with barely any red candles in between that. That's a nice move there. Roku. Roku's the one I have a love-hate relationship with. I love the movement it can give you. I love the dollar amount it can give you, but I hate that it constantly takes my money from me. So Roku, out of every 10 trades on Roku, I'm probably profitable 4. I think I've lost more than I've made on Roku, so I try not to touch it. My first reaction would be bull flag, bull pennant. Right, we've got this upward movement here, and then we've got the pennant here. We can also call it, if we zoom in on just this portion here, we can call that possibly an ascending triangle with this as the resistance, and then we have this upper trend line here. The problem is we have a big downward movement and then a little bit of red, so we don't have the continuation upside. But again, like you said, Friday was a red day for a lot. So if you have one ticker that's red on a day that has a lot of red tickers, it's not too alarming. We have been at this for almost 2 hours. So we will give it to the 2-hour mark. 4 minutes to go. 3 minutes to go. The clock just ticked over. 3 minutes. So if you have tickers, call them out. If you have a comment on anything I've said, call it out. Like I said, if you're negative against anything I've said, by all means, bring that to my attention as well. I do not get mad. I don't hold a grudge. I won't yell at you. I clearly want to see the other side of what I'm thinking. So if you have anything negative against what I've shown, bring that side out so I can see the contradictory side. I won't get mad. That's why I kind of like bouncing ideas off of people, right? Because if I'm looking at something a certain way, I'm going to look at every chart that same way because that's just the way I look at things. That's my mindset. That's how I process things. So if someone else is looking at something different and says, hey, you know what, you're missing, or especially with like the RSI or something. Hey, your chart looks great, but you're not paying attention to RSI. Look at this. It's clearly going to roll over here. Those are things that I love to see the opposite side of what I'm thinking because it just puts another set of eyes on the same chart. And if 10 people are looking at the same chart and we have 8 people with a consensus of what it might do, that's just a strong indication that you're looking at the right things. Or if you're one of the 2 people that looks differently, it's an indication that, you know what, I need to change the way I'm looking at this because 8 people are saying one thing and I'm looking at the other way. So maybe I'm missing something. So I like bouncing ideas off people. Can I go intraday and show an entry and exit on a trade I've already done? I don't have the trading platform up right now. If I can go to... Let me see if I can pull in... Let me see if I can get you guys my actual trading setup. I can perhaps, so I've got so many setups here that I've got to figure out, because I collapsed all of them to do this presentation. And I think it is, actually it's going to be this one. Let me pull this over here to the bigger screen. So this is the actual chart that I will do my day trading and scalping on. And it's going to show a lot of blank because the market's not open. And the reason it's blank is this is a 1-minute chart. This is a 5-minute chart. This is 15-minute for the same day. So these are blank because we had we're closed. So this is 1 minute for today, 5-minute for today, and 15-minute for today. And this is a 5-day, 5-minute chart. So the chart that I actually place trades on is this 5-minute section here is giving me an idea of what the ticker did for the last week of trading. This is the 1-minute chart, which is going to give me an idea of what it's doing right now, which is what I place my day trades and scalps off of. The 5 and the 15 minute give me an indication of what direction we're going in and whether we're changing direction. So it's kind of hard to see just because the market isn't open. What I can do actually is if I change it to, let's put Friday in there. So I'll give you an idea of what it looks like when the market is open. So this would be what I'm looking at during the market. This is today 1 minute. This is today 5 minute. This is today 15 minute. And this over here is going to be a 5-day, 5-minute chart. So again, this is giving me an indication of what the last week of trading was doing. This is my 1 minute chart, which is what I'm looking at today to place the entry and exit. This is the 5 and the 15 minute, which is going to give me an indication of the direction that we're in currently. And this is the actual chart that I place my trades off of. So again, the only things I like on my chart, this yellow line is the VWAP and the purple line is the 34 exponential moving average. That's the only thing I like on there. These red and green lines are actually the 15-minute orb strategy. If you guys don't know about that, check my YouTube channel. There is a video specifically on the opening range breakout. That's what those red and green lines are. Otherwise, the only things I really have on my chart is this purple is the 34 exponential moving average, and this yellow is the VWAP. So taking the orb strategy, this green line, you want to look for a breakout. When it breaks out, that's where the entry would be. When it pulls back, you can see it touches the 34 and bounces. When it breaks below the 34, that would be an exit. You can see the 34 is curling over as well. So you would have a trade from 151.60-ish to about 152.15 if you didn't take profits anywhere up along the way. And that's just one strategy that I trade, is the opening range breakout. So this is the actual chart. I'm placing my trades, entries and exits on this 1 minute. And then I do have another chart that shows 3 minute, depending on the ticker. And then over here I have the 5 and 15 minute to show me direction, and 5-day, 5-minute chart to show me what it did the past week. Any other questions? If not, we will wrap this up because this has been 2 hours. Thank you guys for joining me on a Sunday. If you had no idea about what you might want to trade this coming week, hopefully you got something out of that where you can pull up a ticker or two and get an idea of doing some research real quick before you go to bed tonight. Have something to watch for tomorrow. If you guys have any questions, go to, I guess the easiest way if you're not a Black Box member is go to Twitter. Look me up at 7-Star Mike. Look for this little bug at 7-Star Mike, the number 7. Leave me a message on Twitter. I will answer anything whatsoever. If you are a member of Black Box, might as well pull that up. If you go to Discord, you can find me. Down, scroll, scroll, scroll. Here we go, 7-Star Mike text room. I do have a room down there. Again, look for the bug. That's me over there. So if you're a member of Black Box, you can reach me on Discord. If you're not a member of Black Box, go to Twitter and send me a message on Twitter, and I will answer any questions you have. If I missed any of your questions, please, please, please send me those on Twitter or Discord. If I missed a question, it's because I have 3 screens going here and I didn't mean to skip over you. It's just a matter of I'm watching a bunch of stuff at once, and the screen with the questions is the smallest screen. So if I missed any of your questions, I promise it wasn't intentional. Please, please, please send me a message, and I promise you I will answer that. Anthony Jones, you are welcome. If you are new, there's so much stuff to learn. If it seems overwhelming right now, please do not get frustrated by it. It's very easy to get frustrated by the market. I've actually been in a little bit of a slump from time to time where it draws every little bit of life out of me. And I've been doing this for 4 years, and when I'm in a slump, even after 4 years, it just drains me. So trading can be frustrating. If you're new, there's so much to learn. Just stick with it. make sure you're listening to the right people. And that's not a plug for myself. I'm not a master at this. I'm certainly here to help any way that I can. I've got a lot of information on YouTube. I've got some information on Twitter, part of the Black Box family. We're super supportive and helpful over there. So I can answer a lot of questions for you there. But please don't get discouraged. Trading is hard, and a lot of us tend to make it harder than we need to. So that's what a very supportive community is kind of important to be a part of. And you definitely get that with Black Box. If you're not a member of Black Box, like I said, hit me up on Twitter, leave some comments on YouTube. I'll answer all those. I am super supportive of other traders. If I make money, that doesn't mean you don't. We can all make money, and I love to see everyone making money. It just makes it that much more fun. So if there are no further questions, this has been about 2 hours. Again, thank you guys so much for spending your Sunday night with me. I appreciate it. Hopefully you got something out of this as far as some potential plays for this coming week. I hope it didn't waste your time. There was a little bit about support and resistance in there, but I promise you guys I will have a support and resistance seminar specifically on that topic coming up. And if you guys don't have any other questions, we will sign off. Thank you guys. You have ways to contact me if you need to. I'm going to stick around for a little bit just because there's a delay between comments coming in and me actually seeing them. So I will stick around for a little bit. If you guys don't have any comments, feel free to sign off. Thank you guys for joining me. If you do have comments, I'm going to be silenced, but I will be watching that chat section for a little bit just to see if anything comes filtering in. If you're leaving, good night, and thank you very much. Wes, you are welcome. Renee, good night. Thank you for joining me. And there are no further comments that I can see on there. So once again, thank you guys for joining me Sunday night. It's kind of an indication that you guys are interested in kind of learning a little bit about trading or maybe seeing a ticker that you didn't have your eyes on. So thank you for joining me. I appreciate that. Love the support you guys are showing me on Black Box, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, all of it. When you guys like and subscribe and support and leave comments, I love that. So thank you very much for those of you that do that. If you guys don't subscribe, I'm not mad at you, but if you don't and you like what I've shown you tonight or some of the other videos on my page, please feel free to hit that subscribe button. I love to see the support. Thank you guys very much. Have an awesome night. And let's go make a ton of money tomorrow in the market. Thanks a lot, guys. Have a good night.